What's up, comic book fans, and welcome to Comics Icons. Now, JJ, what they call me, and today we got something new, y'all. Something I've been waiting for since the second I heard about it. The very first issue of a new ongoing series from writer Greg Weisman called The Spectacular Spider-Man. And this series, as I said, will be ongoing, so it's not a mini-series, and it should run for quite a while because if I'm being honest, it is pretty cool. Peter Parker and Miles Morales in their first ever ongoing series as a duo. And I know some of us got some fatigue from the Zeb Wells' run on The Amazing Spider-Man. But this one is different, folks. This one takes us back to the version of Peter Parker that most of us love. That less emo, fun-loving quipster. Those of you who were fans of the animated series Spectacular Spider-Man, myself included, should love this new fun series because Greg Weisman was the pen behind that series as well. So this should be a pretty well received and fun series. So if you guys are ready to have some fun and see what awaits plain old Peter Parker and mild-mannered Miles Morales, then without further ado, you know what time it is. Let's get it. So this issue kind of jumps back and forth between the recent past and present while explaining the story. And it actually starts off in Media Res, or the middle of the plot. And Miles and Peter are swinging off a ledge, and Miles is giving Peter a hard time about going back on his promise. Just a little weekly get-together, you said. Nothing arachnobatic about it at all, you said. And if you happen to see the little Marvel teaser trailer released before the start of the series, then you know that Peter Parker had promised Miles that they'd hang out once a week just as themselves without being Spider-Man. So as expected, that plan went south right away. So now Peter's having to eat a little crow right now as they're fighting the Jackal. So we transition back to then, and the part from the teaser trailer that I had mentioned. And we see Peter trying to set up a weekly get-together from the two Spider-Men sans costumes. Peter's thinking they meet up every Wednesday about 4 p.m., but no team-ups, just being regular guys. No crime fighting, no web slinging, just hanging out as normal folk, catching up on each other's lives. So Miles is down for this idea since these guys got so much in common. Peter even thinks that they can compare some quips. And if Miles has a good one that he's used in Brooklyn, then nobody would know about it in Manhattan. See, I told you guys, this is going to be a fun series. I even like how these guys kind of make fun of how long they've been around as characters. When Peter's like, dude, when you've been quipping as long as I have, and believe me, it feels like I've been at it for 60 years or something, then you'll understand the need for the occasional borrowed quippage. Which is cool because Peter Parker debuted in 1962. So, pretty accurate statement by Mr. Parker. So again, Peter reiterates, it'll be nothing arachnobatic about it at all. And then we go back to the now, when arachnobatic is exactly what they're being right now. And another cool thing is Miles has never fought the Jackal, so he doesn't know who this guy is. So maybe in this series, we get both of these guys kind of fighting some of each other's rogues. But Peter acknowledges that the Jackal has never been hulked out like this before. Meanwhile, in a court appearing somewhere else, we meet a character who I already love. Because this guy's getting sworn in and the bailiff asks him if he swears to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And this guy's response is, no. So now the judge is kind of pissed and she threatens to hold this guy in contempt. But he's like, for what? Being honest? I mean, I'm telling you straight up, I'm gonna lie. And now the judge is kind of speechless after that. But then we transition back to the first Miles and Peter meetup, and they decide that they'll meet each other at the Coffee Bean on the ESU campus, which is Peter's alma mater. So maybe he can try to convince Miles to go there as well. And now Miles is the one with the age jokes when he says, assuming I ever get out of high school, feels like I've been raised in a homeroom for a decade. So it's kind of cool how these guys joke about how long they really been around and how they don't really age as characters. So these guys head into the coffee shop and Peter places his order and he asks for his usual, a medium iced half and half latte with a shot of espresso and a dash of cinnamon. I ain't gonna lie, that kind of sounds fire right now. I can go for one of those. But meanwhile, Miles is already getting his drink because he used the cell phone app, which kind of leaves Peter looking flabbergasted. But then he tells Miles that that's no way to become a regular. He's kind of old school in that sense, and he wants to be recognized when he walks in the door, for them to already know his name and his order. But then Peter bumps into an old girlfriend of Flash Thompson's named Shashan. But Peter brushes her off pretty quickly. Then Miles runs into an old friend that grew up across the street from him named Cedric Harrison. And when Miles sees him, now he's definitely interested in applying to ESU. Then when Cedric gets to the counter, he's instantly recognized by the workers, and they have his order ready for him. A true regular, as Peter acknowledges. But after failing at flirting with the girl behind the counter, Cedric notices an ad on the wall about getting paid for a beta test, which interests him, so he takes the number. Then we transition back to the now, with these guys fighting the Jackal, and while fighting, Peter says the name Miles, to which Miles thinks Peter has just name-dropped his government in front of a villain, and he webs up Peter's mouth. As if that's really gonna stop him from talking behind a mask. But Peter lets Miles know that the Jackal's real name is actually Miles, Professor Miles Warren, which immediately makes Miles think of Peter's high school science teacher. And on cue, we go back to then, back at the coffee shop, when Peter introduces Miles to Professor Warren, who's there for a coffee that he had pre-ordered. But Professor Warren tells Peter that he's there to meet up with Dr. Seymour Krebs, who's inventorying the professor's brother's old lab. Then we go back to the now, and Peter lets Miles know that he met Raymond Aaron Warren, but his younger brother, Miles Warren, that's the Jackal. But it's possible that he's not this Jackal. Then we get another meanwhile scene, and I'm honestly not yet sure how these meanwhile scenes pay off, but I'm assuming they will at some point. But meanwhile, we get a guy singing to a lady and an on-stage play, and he cries after receiving a standing ovation because he's been waiting on this his whole life. But back to the now and the Jackal fight, and now as the Jackal is just straight slamming through walls. These guys are chasing after him while trying to figure out what they're going to call each other when they're together. They workshop calling each other Brooklyn and Manhattan, but Peter is from Queens, just living in Manhattan, so that won't work out. But they eventually arrive back at just calling each other Spider-Man. While at the same time, nothing they do seem to work against stopping this Jackal. But then we get another meanwhile scene, this time with two ladies that meet up at a gondola ride outside of a hotel and end up revealing their love for one another. And then once again, we transition back to the now and the Jackal fight. And the Jackal is going to work on these guys. But Miles realizes that they've both been a little bit distracted during this fight, and it's time to get serious about the Jackal. And then we go back to then. See, I told you guys in the beginning that this story does a lot of back and forth while bringing these timelines together. But we see each time Peter comes back to that coffee shop, he tries to get them to see him as a regular and have his order remembered. And finally, after 12 weeks of this, they finally got it down. And Peter finally has his medium iced half and half latte with a shot of espresso and a dash of cinnamon with his name on it. And for Peter, this is the holy grail. And he enjoys the hell out of the feeling of finally being seen as a regular. And on that day, just as he finally enjoys a sip, that's when the Jackal showed up. And now they've got to get arachnobatic. So back in the now, these guys are trying everything to web this guy up and stop him. But he keeps ripping through their webs like paper. Then finally they're able to wrap him up with enough webbing to get him off the ground with no traction or leverage to break free from him. While these guys are now enjoying finishing each other's sentences. Then later on, after these guys wait around for the Jackal to get tranked and taken to the raft, they pay a visit to Miles Warren's lab, and his brother's there with Mr. Krebs, who's supposed to be there inventorying the lab. And Mr. Krebs acknowledges that he didn't even know this section of the lab existed, but when he turned on the power in the main lab, it must have awakened the creature, as we can see some sort of stasis tube that had been broken out of. But Raymond Warren is just thankful that nobody was hurt. But then Miles, he gets to sniffing and his senses go off, and they realize that somebody did actually get hurt, as they see a skeleton under the rubble that's still smoking. Somebody got messed up real bad, to say the least. But Miles now knows that guys like them don't get a chance to have normal human lives. As Peter finishes his sentence, that eventually things are always gonna get arachnobatic. Then he asks Peter if he came up with the term arachnobatic, which Peter did, and Miles admits that he absolutely loves it. And honestly, so do I. But then as they swing off, we see Cedric, Miles' friend from the coffee shop, and he calls that phone number from the ad that had interested him. And he says that he'd love to get paid to have fun. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the end of the issue. So what did you guys think about this first foray into the new spectacular Spider-Man series? I gotta admit that those meanwhile scenes was kind of confusing, but I'm sure they're gonna pay off eventually. But I love this issue, y'all. And I'm wondering if that was Miles Warren who had gotten killed in the lab. But I thought this series got back to the fun Spider-Man that we all grew to love, and I absolutely can't wait for what comes next. The chemistry that these guys have together is crucial, and I dig it. But if you compare this Greg Weisman's Spider-Man to Zeb Wells's, who do you guys think writes him better? But this mentor relationship with him and Miles, it just works for me. And I really like the art in this issue as well. Shout out to Humberto Ramos and the rest of the crew on this one, because it's miles ahead of the Amazing Spider-Man artwork in my opinion. But what did you guys think about the artwork? And how does it compare to Amazing Spider-Man to you? And what is it do you guys think is happening with those meanwhile scenes? I can't get past those. And how do you guys think those characters will come into play later, if at all? But if you guys enjoyed this video and this channel, and you'd like to support the channel, then you could do so by joining the new Iconic Fan Club channel membership. With your membership, you'll gain access to weekly interactive live streams with yours truly in front of the camera, where we could talk about what's been going down in these issues, as well as ones that you'd like for me to go over in the future and other comic book news as well. And we just had the first live stream debut last week where I previewed all of the upcoming videos for this week. And we're going to have another one coming up this weekend. Plus you guys will get loyalty badges, member shout outs, and more. Or you guys can donate to the channel with a super thanks. And if you're not able to do either of those, then you can still be a huge help to the channel by dropping a like, share, and subscribing to Comics Icons for more icons in the comic book world. But ladies and gentlemen, it's about that time. I'm out. Peace.